June 2024 marked a pivotal moment for one family. They moved into their new home on the picturesque outskirts of Novosibirsk. Sergei, his wife Katya, and their 9-year-old son Artyom left behind a cramped 3-room apartment in the very heart of the city, where 15 years of their lives had been filled with the constant noise of neighbors and the groaning of an old elevator. This move was a true breath of fresh air for them, a new chapter in their lives. The house they'd spent nearly 3 years searching for turned out to be a 2-story cottage with a spacious veranda surrounded by majestic pines and a stunning view of the Ob River, shimmering in the sunlight like molten silver. Though the plot wasn't large, it felt remarkably cozy. A few apple trees, a couple of garden beds that Katya immediately decided to sow with carrots, parsley, and zucchini, and a weathered gazebo that Sergei dreamed of turning into the perfect spot for gatherings with friends and barbecues. It all felt like a dream come true. Artyom, an energetic boy, finally had his own room. Its walls were painted bright green, his favorite color, and shelves proudly displayed his collections of model airplanes and dinosaur figurines, which he'd been amassing since age 4. Sergei and Katya now had the freedom to shape their home exactly as they pleased. Sergei installed a massive projector in the living room, already imagining football nights and family movie sessions, while Katya hung delicate curtains embroidered with intricate patterns. Pots of lavender and mint appeared on the windowsills, filling the house with a comforting aroma, and her own watercolor landscapes of the Siberian taiga adorned the walls. The move was far more than just a change of address, it was the start of a new life. In the city, their days had felt like a never-ending race. Sergei's job at a construction firm designing residential buildings, Artyom's school and robotics club, Katya's endless errands, from grocery runs to coffee dates with friends, traffic jams, phone calls, constant bustle. Here, by the river, time seemed to slow down. In the mornings, Sergei would rise early to sip tea on the veranda, listening to the whisper of pines conversing with the wind and the gentle lapping of the ob. Katya was already busy in the garden, planning where to plant roses and where to set out currant and gooseberry bushes. Artyom, the moment he opened his eyes, would dash into the yard to build a secret fortress out of old planks, blankets, and even plastic crates found in the shed. One day he'd be an astronaut launching a rocket, the next, a medieval knight defending his castle. His parents joked that he'd become a true Ob River boy, even though the nearest village was 25 kilometers away. Sometimes, watching him, Sergei would recall his own childhood in the small town of Potomsk, where he and his friends built similar hideouts and dreamed of adventures. One of their new traditions became Sergei's evening stories for Artyom. He'd given up reading from books, preferring instead to invent tales on the fly, often during his commute through Novosibirsk's ever-worsening traffic jams. His protagonist was a modern-day guy named Misha, who accidentally stumbled into the world of ancient Siberian tribes. Artyom listened, spellbound, as Misha taught hunters to craft spears with GPS trackers made from branches and resin, or tried to explain YouTube to a shaman and why cat videos mattered more than ritual dances. Each morning, while sipping tea and gazing at the river, Sergei would devise a new plot twist, Misha organizing the taiga's first-ever flash mob to the beat of shamanic drums, or introducing locals to shashlik with mayonnaise and ketchup instead of traditional sauces. Artyom listened with bated breath, demanding sequels and sometimes even jotting the stories down in a notebook so he wouldn't forget. Sergei, to be honest, sometimes got carried away by these tales himself. He fantasized about how he, equipped with a drone or smartphone, might become a hero in the Siberian wilderness, somewhere between birch trees and campfires. But he also had other fantasies, adult, forbidden ones, that he tried hard not to entertain, especially around Artyom. At night, sitting alone on the veranda under a starry sky, he'd catch himself lost in thoughts best kept locked away. They arrived uninvited, especially when the silence of the river and the scent of pine created the illusion that the whole world belonged to him alone. Life in the new house flowed at a leisurely pace, but weekends brought it to life. Guests began visiting often, most frequently Katya's parents, Pyotr Grigoryevich and Elena Viktorovna. They lived in Barnaul, a 5-hour drive away, but that never stopped them. Pyotr Grigoryevich, a sturdy man with silver at his temples and a habit of wearing well-worn leather jackets, was the soul of every gathering. He loved telling tall tales from his youth, like the time he drove a battered old Moskvich and fixed it in the middle of the steppe using nothing but wire and ingenuity, or when he and his friends transported a sofa on the car roof and nearly lost it on the highway. Everyone would burst out laughing. Katya adored these stories, and Artyom, perched on his grandfather's knee, would demand details. "Grandpa, what happened next? How'd you catch the sofa? Did it break?" Pyotr Grigoryevich, chuckling, would add ever more colorful embellishments. Sergei sometimes suspected half his stories were pure fiction, but that only made them more charming. But Elena Viktorovna, she was the real star. Sergei's mother-in-law was impossible to ignore. Her dark hair was always elegantly coiled into a bun, her eyes sparkled with mischief, her figure rivaled that of women half her age, and her charisma could heat up any room. Though she was over 50, she carried herself as if time had no hold on her. Her sharp wit was legendary. "Sergei, now that you're a Siberian, where's your Ushanka and Valenki?" she'd tease, sipping tea with a knowing smirk. Or, "You're watering that carrot like it's your enemy. You've got to do it with love, Sergei, love." Sergei had learned to respond with jokes, but, truth be told, her gaze sometimes sent shivers down his spine. There was something magnetic about her, something that made him feel both scrutinized and enchanted. Her presence was like an electric current. He never knew when she'd deliver her next zinger, but he found himself oddly eager for it. Whenever Katya's parents visited, their arrival turned into a full-blown celebration, filled with warmth, laughter, and joy. Pyotr Grigoryevich, with his bottomless well of stories, would transport everyone into the past. Meanwhile, Katya, like a kitchen sorceress, conjured culinary masterpieces. Her signature meat-stuffed cabbage rolls or fragrant potato and mushroom pies always drew raves. Elena Viktorovna, ever sharp-tongued, never missed a chance to needle her son-in-law, mocking his old sweater, "It belongs in a museum," or criticizing his onion-chopping technique. "Too thick, Sergei. You've got to economize." Artyom, bursting with energy, would race around the house, showing his grandfather his latest airplane models or dragging him into the garden to inspect his secret fortress. Sometimes he even managed to rope Elena Viktorovna into his games, and to everyone's surprise, she'd gleefully play along, taking on the role of Queen of the Galaxy with the same charisma she usually reserved for teasing her son-in-law. Watching this, Sergei couldn't help but think, something had to be done about his mother-in-law. Living under her constant, albeit good-natured, scrutiny was fun, but occasionally exhausting. He'd long realized that with Elena Viktorovna, one had to either laugh along or book therapy sessions. He'd chosen laughter, but lately, he'd been wondering how to truly connect with her, so her barbs wouldn't leave that faint, unpleasant aftertaste. Weekend visits became a cornerstone of their family life. The house filled with bright laughter, the clinking of dishes, and the melodies of old songs played on Pyotr Grigoryevich's vintage cassette player. He brought tapes of Vladimir Vysotsky, Mashine of Remini, and rare Alla Pugacheva recordings. Sergei and Pyotr Grigoryevich would sit on the veranda reminiscing about the 90s, when everyone dreamed of VCRs, Adidas sneakers, and trips to the Black Sea. Elena Viktorovna, though she teased them for their nostalgia, would sometimes hum along, especially to Arlecchino or A Million Scarlet Roses. Sergei noticed how, while stirring pilaf at the stove, she'd gently nod her head to the rhythm. In those moments, she seemed less like a formidable mother-in-law and more like a woman who, decades ago, might have danced to these very songs at discos, laughed at parties, and dreamed of something bigger than life in Barnaul. Still, her jabs never ceased. Once, while the whole family painted the gazebo, she took one look at Sergei's uneven brushstrokes and snorted, "Sergei, you're holding that brush like it's an axe. Where's your famed architectural precision?" Sergei laughed and shot back, "Elena Viktorovna, I'm saving my best work for the house. Or do you think I'll mess that up too?" She smiled, not mockingly, but warmly, and for the first time, Sergei thought maybe they could actually find common ground. Yet every visit felt like a game. He waited for her next jab, she seemed to enjoy watching him parry. It was their little duel, and Sergei began to suspect she enjoyed it as much as he did. Sometimes, when she tossed off another quip, he caught not just mockery in her eyes, but something else, almost as if she were testing how far he'd go in this playful battle. Life by the Ob was filled with small joys. Mornings began with Sergei rising early to water the garden before work. Katya prepared delicious breakfasts, honey-drizzled pancakes or fried eggs with homegrown tomatoes she proudly cultivated. Artyom, the moment he woke, would rush to check if birds had stolen his secret treasure, a box of shiny nuts and bolts hidden under the gazebo. Sergei and Katya joked that he'd soon be writing memoirs of his adventures, and he'd laugh, declaring he'd become a great inventor, like Elon Musk. They continued to make the house their own. Sergei built swings for Artyom in the yard, Katya got chickens, dreaming of her own little farm. Each morning she collected eggs, and watching her enthusiasm, Sergei thought, how lucky I am to have her. Their daily lives grew richer in other ways too. Soon after the move, they met the Ivanovs, neighbors 2 houses down, typical Siberians, warm, loud, and always inviting people over for any reason. The family patriarch, Uncle Kolya, a retired military man, loved serving his homemade cedar nut tincture and recounting how, in the 90s, he'd haul potatoes from his village to sell in Novosibirsk. His wife, Aunt Luba, baked apple and cranberry pies so good that Katya immediately begged for the recipe. The Ivanovs often dropped by with gifts, a jar of honey, a basket of wild mushrooms from the taiga, and Sergei and Katya reciprocated with her sea buckthorn jam or his shashlik, which Uncle Kolya claimed beat any restaurants. Artyom befriended their 10-year-old son, Vovka, and the two spent whole days racing around, building spaceships from old crates and sticks found in the shed. Sometimes they'd stage epic battles with other neighborhood kids, and watching them, Sergei remembered his own childhood, running through courtyards, imagining himself a hero. Sergei and Katya started attending local gatherings where villagers discussed everything from potato prices to the new bridge over the OB. They grew close to other neighbors, Aunt Nadia, who taught Katya to knit warm socks, and Uncle Sasha, who helped Sergei fix the lawnmower. Artyom joined a local robotics club, and every Saturday, Sergei and Katya cheered him on at competitions, where he proudly presented his inventions, from simple toy cars to complex robots that blinked lights. Sergei even took up fishing. Uncle Kolya took him out on the Ob, where they'd sit for hours with their rods, talking about life, work, and dreams. Katya, meanwhile, dove deep into gardening. She ordered rare tomato seeds, devoured agronomy books, and even started a blog sharing recipes and vegetable growing tips. Her passion was infectious, and Sergei sometimes joked they'd soon be supplying cucumbers to all of Novosibirsk. The move also reshaped Sergei's professional life. He increasingly took on remote projects, which allowed him more time with his family, but that didn't mean idleness. He spent hours designing residential complexes and bridges, immersed in blueprints and calculations on his laptop. Evenings were reserved for planning with Katya how to convert the attic into a workshop. She dreamed of sewing clothes, he longed to craft wooden furniture. Their hobbies soon led them to local fairs, where they sold Katya's jams and Sergei's handcrafted wooden items, from cutting boards to miniature children's chairs. This helped them integrate quickly into the community, and soon they were invited to every local event, Village Day, Maslenitsa, where they served fresh blini to all their neighbors. Still, the most anticipated visits remained those of Elena Viktorovna. She came either with Pyotr Grigorievich or alone when he was tending his garden back in Barnaul. Over time, Sergei began to notice that her usual barbs had softened, and her glances lingered longer than before. Once, while planting potatoes together, she looked at him and said, "Sergei, you may not be a gardener, but your effort is clear." And that's already half the battle. Her words surprised him. Compliments from Elena Viktorovna were rare indeed. He replied, "Well, if I've earned your approval, then I must be on the right path." She laughed, and in that laugh, he heard something new, not mockery, but genuine warmth. The moment stayed with him. They stood amid the rose, sunlight on her face, and her smile was so disarming that, for an instant, he forgot she was his mother-in-law. Gradually, Sergei realized his thoughts about Elena Viktorovna were occupying too much space. One evening, as the family gathered in the yard to prepare shashlik, she stood by the grill helping Katya thread meat onto skewers, softly singing an old song about the black raven. Katya laughed and joined in, and Sergei caught himself staring at Elena Viktorovna longer than he should have. Her movements, her voice, the way she adjusted her headscarf, it all drew him like a magnet. He tried to look away, but his eyes kept returning to her, like a compass needle finding true north. He felt like a teenager experiencing his first crush, and that feeling terrified him. He pushed those thoughts away, reminding himself that she was his wife's mother, that his relationship with Katya was strong, and that all this was merely imagination playing tricks on him. Yet the thoughts kept returning, especially at night, when he sat on the veranda watching the stars and listening to the river's whisper. Once, during another visit, he and Pyotr Grigorievich decided to celebrate their arrival. A bottle of homemade moonshine appeared on the table, brought by his father-in-law from a friend in Kemerova. "This isn't your store-bought vodka, Sergei," he declared proudly as he poured it into shot glasses. "This is the soul of the Altai." Opposite him, Elena Viktorovna sipped her wine and delivered one of her trademark barbed remarks. "Well, son-in-law, now you're a true Ob River local, where's your sailor's jersey and your accordion?" she teased, her eyes glinting in the candlelight. Sergei only laughed, but inside, a thought was taking root: it's time to sort things out with her. It wasn't that they were enemies, far from it, but her jabs sometimes stung, and he longed for peace in the family, free of resentment and tension. Yet how could he start such a conversation without the right opening? And, as luck would have it, the right moment never came. Months passed. Sergei kept inventing stories for Artyom. Katya fell more deeply in love with their new home, while he increasingly caught himself thinking about Elena Viktorovna more than he should. Her gaze, her laughter, the way she tucked her hair behind her ear, it all drew him in. He watched as she bent over the garden beds helping Katya, adjusting her scarf, sunlight dancing in her dark hair. Sometimes she'd catch him looking and smile, mockingly, perhaps, or with some hidden meaning. It threw him off balance, and he'd chase the thoughts away, returning to his chores. But they always came back, like the endless waves of the OB life by the river was filled with quiet joys. Sergei rose early each morning to water the garden before work. Katya cooked breakfast, sometimes cabbage pies, sometimes omelets with sausage from local farmers. Artyom, the moment he woke, would dash to check if the birds had stolen his secret treasure, a box of shiny nuts hidden under the gazebo. The Ivanovs next door had practically become family. Uncle Kolya helped fix the fence, and Aunt Luba taught Katya how to bake urban-fused bread. Sergei and Katya even started joining local festivities, making blini for Maslenitsa, competing in shashlik contests on Village Day, where his recipes always won prizes. They dreamed of the future. She wanted to open a little shop selling homemade preserves. He planned to build a workshop to craft and sell furniture. But thoughts of Elena Viktorovna wouldn't leave him alone. They surfaced at the most unexpected moments, while he repaired the gazebo, watched the Ob sunset, or heard her laughter during family dinners. He began noticing small things: how she adjusted her glasses while reading to Artyom, how she joked with neighbors, how her voice softened when she spoke of the past. It felt like a spell, and he didn't know what to do with it. Then, finally, the perfect opportunity arose. Katya and Artyom went away for the weekend to visit her friend in Tomsk, and Elena Viktorovna came alone to help with the garden. "Well, Sergei," she said, surveying the beds and adjusting her light scarf, "show me how you're managing out here without city noise." He made up his mind: this is my chance. He set the veranda table with cheese, olives, fruit, and uncorked a bottle of aged whiskey he'd been saving for a special occasion. The evening was warm. The Ob shimmered under the moon, and the pines rustled softly. "Elena Viktorovna, let's sit and talk," he suggested, trying to hide his nervousness. She looked at him with a hint of amusement. "Oh, Sergei, you're plotting something." "All right, pour away." Night fell, and their conversation stretched on, absorbing them completely. Outside, the wind murmured through the pines, and the distant river lapped gently against its banks. In that atmosphere of comfort and trust, Sergei finally voiced everything weighing on his heart. He confessed how her sharp comments sometimes wounded his pride, how deeply he desired less tension in the family, and how endlessly grateful he was to Katya, the embodiment of everything good in his life. Elena Viktorovna listened intently, nodding occasionally or offering a faint, knowing smile. In the flickering candlelight, her eyes sparkled, not just with their usual teasing glint, but with something warm and profoundly human. In turn, she drifted into memories of her youth, how she and Pyotr Grigorievich had started their life together in Barnaul, how they'd weathered the turbulent 90s, and how she'd once dreamed of becoming a singer, only to set that dream aside for her family. "You know, Sergei," she said, gazing into the distance as if searching for lost years, "I sang in a choir back then. Everyone said I had a voice like Linda's." Sergei listened, and for the first time in years, he didn't see just his mother-in-law, he saw a woman rich with history, unfulfilled dreams, and a quiet melancholy for what had passed. Their talk meandered through old films. They passionately debated whether Brother or Brother 2 was better and laughed remembering how Artyom once tried to fix Sergei's lawnmower with nothing but a screwdriver. She told him how, in her youth, she danced at discos to modern talking and how Pyotr Grigorievich had nearly fought another man over her. "He was so fiery back then," she said, a tender smile playing on her lips. Sergei noticed her smile had softened, her eyes grown warmer. They sipped whiskey, and the conversation grew more intimate. He shared his fears about moving to the countryside, worrying it might have been a mistake, that Katya might miss city life. She nodded, then suddenly said, "You're a good man, Sergei. Not every husband would make such a sacrifice for his family." When Katya called to say she'd stay with her friend until morning, Elena Viktorovna raised her glass with a smile. "Well then, Sergei, shall we toast to a truce?" Sergei laughed. "To peace in the family. Rowing in opposite directions in the same boat gets you nowhere." She laughed too. "That's the first time I've heard you say something so warm, without your usual irony." Their conversation circled back to life, dreams, and how swiftly time flies. Something light, almost intimate, hung in the air. A few times, their eyes met and lingered just a moment too long, and in those instants, something new flickered between them, something that could only be called flirtation. Then, as she leaned in slightly to tuck a stray lock of hair behind her ear, Sergei lost control. The kiss happened on its own, as if it were meant to be. They moved to the living room sofa, and passion engulfed them like a storm sweeping across the OB. It was unexpected, fiery, and damn it, all too right in that moment. The ice that had existed between them for years melted that night. Sergei woke the next morning with a lightness in his chest. Elena Viktorovna was already bustling in the kitchen, humming "Oi, to any vetcher." She set a mug of coffee before him and winked. "Well, son-in-law? Peace?" Sergei just nodded, hiding a smile. 8 months had passed since life in the house took on a new hue. Elena Viktorovna, whose presence once caused faint unease, now visited nearly every weekend. Her biting remarks had vanished, replaced by good-natured jokes, genuine care, and even eager help in the garden, a welcome surprise. She had transformed into the ideal mother-in-law many could only dream of. Katya, her daughter, seemed to sense the shift too, noting how much lighter and more pleasant the atmosphere at home had become, but of course, the true reason for this transformation remained a secret to her. Meanwhile, Sergei and Elena Viktorovna occasionally found moments to be alone together. And each time, the same passion that had ignited that unforgettable first night returned. Remarkably, these secret encounters seemed only to strengthen the family bond. Sometimes, restoring harmony in relationships requires nothing more than an honest, heartfelt conversation. And sometimes, as this story shows, even a single night of fierce passion is enough.